Hi, this is Harish here. Welcome to Db2 LDAP tips and tricks video tutorial part 159. In this video tutorial, I'm going to talk about how to configure transparent LDAP authentication for a Db2 server. The scripts that I'm using, the data files that I'm using are available for download at db2lewacademy.blogspot.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/db2lewacademy. And this is the problem scenario. The problem scenario is we want to configure LDAP authentication on our Db2 server. So what it means simply is the username, the password, and the groups, which is called the POSIX schema or the POSIX account information, which is like in your etc password and etc group files, so an etc shadow file. So these things are going to be residing on the LDAP server, which will be different. Like for example, our Db2 server here is an RHEL machine 7.8. Db2 version is 11.5.6.0 installed on it, and we will install open LDAP server in Ubuntu machine 22.04. And if you want to install the open LDAP server, like I would suggest don't go for an RHEL version, go for the Ubuntu LDAP combination, because it comes with a lot of pre-configuration, like the POSIX schema is pre-configured, and there is a detailed documentation available, https ubuntu.com/server/docs/service LDAP. So if you follow those steps, it's very neatly given. So all you need to just do is install a couple of packages for the open LDAP server and check whether it is up and running, and then you can add data to the directory tree. The POSIX account is already there, so you just need to add the data. And once you add the data, obviously this is just a basic setup. This is not like an enterprise setup, so we are not looking at SSL TLS kind of a configuration, which is an encryption between the LDAP client and the LDAP server. So that is not part of this tutorial, and there's no ACL configured on the LDAP server. Also, ACL is access control list. So if you have an LDAP server, who can connect to that LDAP server, whether they have access to the full tree, whether they have access to only part of the directory structure, or whether they can do modifications, or whether they can only read only purposes, like they can only connect and basically read the data, view the data, cannot modify the data. Like that kind of an access control mechanism is not in place. And so it's not a very secure way of configuration. This is not an enterprise setup. This is just for a learning purpose. So once you install the open LDAP server on Ubuntu, following the steps that are provided in the URL, and you have to, the next step is to install and configure your LDAP client, and particularly the package NSS spam LDAP-D. You should do this on your Db2 server machine, which is like RHEL 7.8. So the packages are there. I'll show you them. After that, on the Db2 side, you need to set a registry variable, and there is a etc pam.d db2 file which you need to set. There are certain contents. I'm going to show that. So pretty much that's it. So once you do all these things, you should be able to see the users and groups which are there in the LDAP server getting visible on to the RHEL system, and you can use Db2 to connect to that. The database instance, everything will be in RHEL server, but the user account information will not be in the etc password or etc group file. It will be coming from the LDAP server file or the LDAP server. So that is the concept. So let's see what steps I have done. Here I have already a couple of systems available. So I have my Ubuntu system. When I did that, I did the configuration. I went through that URL, and this is the command for adding the user and groups.ldf, and I have given you the user and groups.ldf, how the file needs to look at, what are the contents. So this is for, here I am creating a POSIX group Db2 IADM, and a POSIX account or an inet org person POSIX account shadow account, which is UID Db2 INST. So the username will be Db2 INST. The password will be like it's like an encrypted one. So you can set the password using this command. Everything needs to be done on the server side. Excuse me. So once you do everything on the server side, so we can check, like for example, LDAP search like this on the server. So I'll log into the Ubuntu server. So this is the one. So once I do that, you can see that the UID is db2 inst, UID number is 5000, GID number is 5000, and it is accessible. So this is like on this server, right? So if I so for example, if I say systemctl status slapd, so that's the daemon that should be running. So once this is up and running, you can make sure that rest of the steps, like you have to configure or you have to add the data and everything. And once that portion is done, if I say, like for example, id db2 inst, there is no user like that in this system or in this thing, because it is there in the LDAP server. Okay, and like for example, if you say more, or for example, I'll say like grep-i db2 etc password, sorry. So there is no user with the name with anything starting as db2, and you can look at the group file. There's nothing like for example, if I say, so since this is the server, so I can say gpfs1, right? So gpfs1, like there is a group gpfs1 with id 1000. So here I can say like id gpfs1, like that. So it will show the information, right? But it is not showing anything for db2 inst, which is the LDAP user, because you can only access that information using this command, which is the LDAP search. Basically, you need to search your LDAP server to get that information. So it's not configured. So because this is the LDAP server, this is not configured to log in with this LDAP user account. So the LDAP server is not aware of this. The LDAP server, in the sense, the Ubuntu server is not aware of this user at all. Okay, and it need not be. It will just house the LDAP server, which will in turn house the user IDs, user ID number, the GID number, the home directory, everything is there. Now, if you the next step would be like, this is to be done on the server side, and on the client side here I'm using this RHEL system, which is B. If you want, like I can show you that more /etc/release or something. No, Red Hat release. Yeah, so it is Red Hat server 7.8. So I have to install a couple of packages here. Install Open LDAP clients, NSS spam LDAPD, odd job make home directory, which I have already installed all these things. And once I have installed, it should be, and see here how I am querying the information using the IP address of the Ubuntu server. So once I do that, so I should be able to get the same information, like the db2 inst user information here. And here I can say id db2 inst, because this should be accessible, and you can see the ID is 5000 in sync with the LDAP server. And here also, if you look at more /etc/password, you will not have an entry like for example db2, like the db2 inst. So for example, grep-i db2, see, this is the one. There is only db2 fence1, which we are not using, so it's not available. And etc group, I am looking for db2 inst, and obviously that is not there. And I'm looking for db2 iadm. Alright, so db2 inst is uid 5000, and db2 iadm is the group with the group id 5000. So those things are not available in the local file. So what you need to do is make sure of a couple of things here. So what is happening? So once you install this NSS spam LDAPD and odd job make home directory and LDAP client, your LDAP search utility will be there. So using that, you should be able to connect and get the information. And after that, you have to say auth config, enable LDAP authentication, LDAP server, LDAP base DN, enable make home directory update. So if you run this command, I'm not going to run this command again, but if you run this command, it will do a lot of things for you. So the first thing it does is etc nss switch.conf. So I can show you that file. Okay, I have to say like more. So it puts an entry for like for the password, for the shadow, for the group, right? So check for the LDAP, check for the LDAP, then system securities daemon, system security services daemon, then go for the files. So these three things are really important. So that's the change, and you don't need to change anything. Like if you install those packages, these files are already modified for you, so you don't need to add anything as such. And the next thing that you need to do is etc pam.db2 db2. If this file is not there, you might have to create this file, and so this is the content of that file, which says for authentication, account, password and session, you go to the system auth. So if you look at the same inside pam.d, there is a system auth file, and that system auth file will have for the authentication use pam LDAP, for the account information use pam LDAP right here. For the account information use pam LDAP. For the password information use pam LDAP. For the session information use the odd job make home directory with pam LDAP. Okay, so these are, and you don't need to make any changes to these files again, because this is like, see, this file is auto generated, so you don't need to change any of these things. Just look up for these entries and they're all fine and hunky-dory. So once that is there, if I say id db2 inst, I should be able to get this information 5000. Whereas even though here, if I say, for example, grep-i db2 / etc password, so there's no user like that, right? There's no group like that with db2 inst or db2 iadm. Nothing is available, but my search will be able to be if I do this search, it should be able to work properly. It should be able to fetch that information for me. So once this information is fetched, I'm all set. So I can log in as su-ic blue. Okay, and I'll say db2 set -all. So I have to just set this registry variable db2 auth os auth db. So once this is set, I can stop and restart the instance just for the completion. And once I do that, I can really connect to BUDDB. So if I do this connection like this, it will log in as IC blue, right? Which is like, we don't want. You can look at the authorization ID is IC blue. That is not, that's like a local connection, which I don't want. So I'll be using connect to user db2 inst, and I'll give the password for that. So now it is connecting with SQL authorization db2 inst. So that is very, very important. So because this, now I have connected to the database with the user db2 inst, whereas the db2 inst user is not at all there in this system. It is not even there in the Ubuntu server or the LDAP server. It is there in the LDAP server directory structure. Okay, the username, passwords, the group information is stored in the Ubuntu server, which is housing the LDAP server, and from that LDAP server I'm getting that information and I'm able to connect that. So no special configuration, no dbcfg, no dbmcfg changes. Like you will be basically going with the server authentication mode. Just make sure that your default authentication is server, because the authentication is happening on the server side. And even though this blue eyes is a client, you have to send in a username and password. The db2 authentication will happen on the server side. So here it is a local connection, but the username password authentication is done on the server blue eyes, and it is using LDAP for the purpose of authentication, which is what we have done by installing all those packages. And pretty much that's it. And you can also see, like, for example, I'll just connect reset. can see like that I showed you that home one import that odd job make home directory, right? So it should, if that module is there, then what will happen is like cd/home, it will create the db2 inst home folder. Otherwise, if that module is not there, it won't create the db2 inst home folder, inside which again I don't know what is going to be there. So let's check it out. Currently there is nothing out there, but it can create all the files and you can place all the files. You can even house your database in this, but usually we don't do this. Rather my instance owner, which is like IC Blue, so that IC Blue user is a local user only on the DB2 server. I'm not changing that. I'm only changing the end user which is connecting to the DB2 database. I'm not talking about instance user. Even though you can configure the instance user to come from the same LDAP server, that's the same steps are involved. It's not so different, but for simplicity, like sometimes something happens on the LDAP server, we just don't want to land into a situation where the user ID and password is not available locally and we are not able to log in as that particular instance owner, because if the LDAP server is down, it will from where it will fetch the username and password. It has to fetch from the etc password and etc shadow file and etc group file, and then I need to maintain the same information both on the LDAP server and on the POSIX account, right? So which is kind of a duplicate. So for instance owner, usually I don't suggest, let the instance owner be as a local user on the server, DB2 server. For all the end users who are connecting to the DB2 with some username and password, those information can come from the LDAP server, which is housed in the Ubuntu server, which is housing the LDAP also with the directory structure. So that I think this is just basically how it works. But from the DB2 side, you are doing extremely very less things, okay, to set up. The only thing is to set up. That is the only part where the complication is. Like it might be some, like, what do you call, like a daunting task or an intimidating until you learn what that LDAP is, and it's pretty much easy to learn. Like it's not that difficult either. So the commands are there. If you follow the link that I have given and just step by step try to read and understand what you're doing, and then issue the command never fails. It works properly as long as you maintain all the versions also. That's why I have, in this video tutorial, I have maintained given the versions of the DB2 software, I have given the versions of the RHEL, I have given my setup with version numbers. So if you maintain the same version numbers, and if your LDAP configuration is successful, and if you are able to import these users into the LDAP server, and you are able to query that information from the LDAP client, which is the RHEL 7.8, if you are successful with these two steps, right, I think this step pretty much is for a given. You will not fail in this step, okay. And I have shown you the NSS switch.conf, I have shown you the DB2, and there is etc pam.d system auth file also. If you want, you can go and look into that file also, what is there in that. But all these three files, you're never going to touch, modify anything. Like if you install these odd job, make home directory, NSS spam, LDAP D, open LDAP clients, it's going to change certain things for you here, and you don't need to, mostly you don't need to touch anything unless it is, see, as long as you're doing a basic setup and try to learn for the learning purpose, you wanted to do a test system and like have a hands-on and a feel for it, where in an enterprise environment you might not be able to do that because of various access permissions. You can set up your own LDAP server, you can set up your DB2, you can configure this whole LDAP authentication and have an understanding of how things work, and that might really help you in your real-time environment, okay. So that is the idea of this tutorial, and as usual, hope this information was useful to you. Subscribe to my channel, Db2 LUW, Academy. See you in the next video tutorial. Until then, bye bye.